Hello, everyone. My name is Greg Mannix. I'm VP of International Business Development. I'm based in Europe, and I'm also General Manager for Europe. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Hello, everyone. My name is Karen Dio. I'm the VP of Product at Life Science Nation and responsible for educational content. And we're glad that you could join us for this session.
Yeah, thanks for being here, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the importance of partnering. Partnering events are a really big part of growing your startup and fundraising. As you probably know, Life Science Nation hosts the RESI conference, which is one partnering event particularly catered to early stage companies. But really, what we're going to talk about today is applicable to any partnering conference. So, just a brief introduction of Life Science Nation and what we do. We started as a data company. What we do is we curate a database of life science investors from around the world into a database that's available on a subscription basis. This it's a really powerful tool for companies that are fundraising because you can develop a target list of investors that are a fit for your technology, your stage of development, and your geographical location. So on today's call, we have companies from North America, Europe, and we talk to companies in Asia, Australia as well. No matter where you are, there are investors who are suited for you, and our database is a way to access those investors. And many of those investors in our database also come to our RESI conference, so the two really tie together nicely. One thing that we are developing is called um, uh, Global Partnering Campaign, GPC. And this is a custom app on a customer relationships management platform called Salesforce. Many of you are familiar with it. It's the biggest CRM program in the world and the most widely used. And we've developed a custom app that allows you not only to access the information from the database on investors to complete, to grow your target list of investors, but it also gives you a management tool for your outbound campaign to contact those investors. So we're happy to show that to you. Just get in touch with us. Karen and myself will have our emails at the end of the presentation. Get in touch with us. We're happy to show you how it works. It's very reasonably priced at $350 a month. Yeah, for a minimum of 6 months, but very accessible for startup companies. The RESI conference is one of many partnering conferences that are out there in the world, but it's the only one that's really focused on early stage funding, as the name would apply. Redefining early stage investments, that's what RESI stands for. We do it 5 times a year. We're always in San Francisco for JPM in January, and we're always in Boston in September. And then we offer three other conferences throughout the year in different places. We've done one in Europe this year, in Barcelona. We're doing another one in London in December. We did one in Atlanta in March. So, next year, stay tuned. We'll have an exciting program of conferences going on. We do educational programs, custom made for different groups, and then we have publications. So that's LSN in a nutshell. So if you are a fundraising CEO, you have a startup company, these are the steps that you will need to take in order to be successful. So, you need to develop your story. You need to understand how to tell your story and put that into marketing collateral that you'll be using for your fundraising. Think of your deck, your executive summary, your one-page um, data sheet. You need to have a list of investors to go after. And once you have that list, it's really useful to put that into a CRM, like I mentioned earlier. So Salesforce.com is one option for managing your leads. But if you think about it, if you have a target list of 500 investors and probably well over 1,000 contacts from those investors, you can't manage that on a spreadsheet. So you should really think about using one of these programs. It's really helpful to have an administrative person to help you schedule meetings because many times, and I know this from personal experience, we think we're going to do a great job doing these things and we're going to be really diligent and organized and all in scheduling meetings. But if you're a CEO of a startup company, you're not going to have enough time to really do it efficiently. So having someone help you is great. And then you go on and you'll be canvassing uh, your um, your target list, and you will go to partnering events, which is what we're going to talk about today. So your roadshow and partnering events really entails reaching out in advance and scheduling meetings with the right investors in advance of the event coming up. And then, when you're in San Francisco during JP Morgan, the RESI conference is the place to meet early stage investors, but there's also many other things going on that week. So you really need to plan in advance before you spend all that considerable money that it costs to go to these conferences, in San Francisco or Boston or wherever you might be going. Yeah, and so that's what we're going to talk about today is the preparing for these partnering events. This is just an example of the marketing collateral that we think you will need when you go to any partnering event or just for your outreach to investors. You'll have an executive summary, you'll have a one pager, and you'll have a pitch deck that shouldn't be longer than 12 to 14 slides. This is really important because it needs to be concise enough that investors will actually look at it. And before you can develop these elements of your marketing collateral, it's really useful to have a tagline, 6 to 8 words, and an elevator pitch to help you develop the rest of your materials. So the first thing you'll want to do when you sign up and log into any partnering platform for one of these partnering conferences, be it RESI or be it any other conference, is you want to set up a profile, not only for your company, but also for yourself as the person attending, as CEO of the company or as chief business officer or whatever whatever role you might have. So when you set up that profile, and it's hard to believe, but we've been doing the Resi conference for many years now, and I'm always surprised at how many companies don't take the time to set up a decent profile. And what a waste! You're spending all this money going to a conference, and an investor might take an interest and look at your profile, and you haven't taken the time to set it up the right way. So upload your logo, put your website in there in case someone wants to take a look. Upload a deck or an executive summary or a tear sheet or all three. But upload that information, and then in any partnering platform, you have sections where you can fill in key information about your company. Doesn't have to be long; it just has to be complete. So once you've done that, you're going to begin reaching out to the people who you think you need to meet with. And these, will typically be investors, pharma companies, big pharma, big medtech, that we call licensing partners. And first, you have to identify which ones you're going to reach out to. And I will say at the RESI conference, redefining early stage investment, our focus is on early stage, and we make a big effort in our partnering platform to give you as much information as possible about those investors who are attending, so you can really identify which ones are a good fit for you, depending on are you doing a drug, a device, digital health platform, diagnostics, whatever, and which investors are investing in those areas, and what's your stage of development, and which are the right investors for that. So once you've identified the investors that you want to reach out to, you need to develop an outbound meeting request. And the message you develop is really important because this is going to be the investor's first glance at your company. And typically, it will go to their email and to their own partnering platform at the conference. But this is what they're going to see. So, what we recommend is that you prepare this message, this outbound message that you're going to send to investors to request a meeting. And on that same sheet, prepare your follow-up messages, which we'll talk about in a moment. And you'll have that Word document where you have the templates that you're going to use, and you'll always want to personalize it to the person you're reaching out to by first name. So, you can say, Dear John, or Hi, John, or however, or just John, however you typically reach out to someone, but personalize that. And then in your message, introduce yourself and your company. Like, did you spin out from a university or a hospital? Are you developing a drug, a device, whatever? What sector are you in? For what indication or what problem, and what stage of development? You need to introduce your company completely, and introduce yourself. Who are you, and what's your position in the company? Are you the CEO? Are you the chief business officer? Are you the chief scientific officer? Whatever. So introduce yourself, and then introduce what the key value proposition of your company is. And this can be pretty much like your elevator pitch. It's a short paragraph that's saying, what makes your technology different, special? Why does it address these problems better than what's being used today? And then what stage of fundraising you're in? Are you raising seed round? Are you raising Series A round? How much money are you raising? For what use? And you can say that in a sentence. And then if you have something specific that you see about this investor that you're reaching out to that is relevant, like why you would be a particularly good fit, you should definitely customize your message for that investor. I mean, that's really helpful to catch their attention if you're able to customize it. If you're reaching out to 100 different investors, you may not be able to customize every message. But the ones that you think are your top priorities, try to customize the message. Do some research. Check out, the investment firm's website. Look up the person you're meeting with on LinkedIn. We'll talk about preparing for your meeting later as well. And then just make it clear that you're requesting a meeting. Typically, you'll put that in the subject line that you're requesting a meeting. And here's an example from a med tech company from a few years ago, but it just gives you an idea of the length of the message. This particular company was very successful in getting meetings, and it gives you an idea of the type of information that you might want to include. So, this is a real example. And by the way, we will share these slides after the presentation. We'll send them to you by email, and you'll be able to read this thoroughly. We're not going to go into it now. But the key here is that you don't want to leave out important information in your meeting request. We see this all the time. We see companies that send a very, very deficient meeting request with very little information, and the investor really doesn't have criteria to understand if this is a company that they would be interested in talking to. And guess what's going to happen? They're not going to take the meeting. So you really have to catch their attention with the key information that investors are looking for that we spoke about earlier. Another important thing that you can do at any conference that you're going to is to request as many meetings as possible. And by that, I mean, at the RESI conference coming up in September, we're expecting 300, 350 investors to be attending. And for any given indication, there will be close to 100 investors or maybe more that would be a fit. So if you reach out to 10 investors, um, chances are you're not going to have very many meetings. It's just, it's a numbers game. And keep in mind that investors are really busy. They're going to focus on the companies that look the most exciting, the most enticing. And they will go through many meeting invitations to decide which ones to meet with. So if you reach out to 100 investors, and you'll see here that people who got 20 plus meetings reached out to about 100 investors on average. And that's a lot of work. It really is a lot of work, but that's the way you will get the most out of a conference. And even though that sounds like common sense, a lot of people don't do that because, as I mentioned, it is really time consuming. It's really, really tough to do. But you have to find the time, and you want to get the most out of the conference that you're going to. So book as many meetings as possible, and then super important, and here you can see the timeline of scheduling activity. So even though you begin reaching out early, you won't start to see meetings getting confirmed until really the 2 weeks leading up to the event is when most of the partnering activity will take place. So this is the importance of follow-up that we're going to speak about now. Um, we recommend that you reach out early. So for our September 25th event, which is in 3 weeks, now is the time, and last week and this week are a really good time to start reaching out to those investors that are a fit. And then you'll be following up several times leading up to the conference. And that's when the meetings start to get confirmed. So by following up, you're putting your request back at the top of their email bin, because if you reached out last week, a lot of investors may have missed your message, and it will gradually go to the bottom of their inbox. If you continue to follow up with compelling messages, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, if you continue to follow up several times leading up to the meeting, the chances of you getting seen by each investor goes up. So sending out one meeting request is not enough. It's not is a lot of investors will miss that one meeting request. But if you send out a meeting request and 3 or 4 follow-up messages, your chances of getting seen and your chances of getting meetings go up. So reach out via the partnering platform for sure. That's your initial meeting request. And then after 3, 4 business days, maybe a week, send your first follow-up message and focus on something a little bit different than your initial meeting request. As we mentioned earlier, your initial meeting request has kind of an overview of your company, your fundraising stage, your stage of fundraising, who you are, etc. So in your next message, you can focus on something different. So you could focus on your technology, give a little bit more information about your technology and how it works and why it's so special. Then after several days or a week, send a second follow-up message. And it really is helpful if you put in the subject line or to start your message, second request, third request, etc. And then you can focus on the market that you're addressing or the unmet need that your technology is solving. And finally, you can say third and final request or fourth and final request, and you can talk about your management team because that's something that investors will always be interested in. No investor will look at a company or take a company seriously without understanding who the management team is. So that's always a key element that you want to focus on. And you can do that in your final meeting request leading up to the meeting. And that might be the week before the conference or just a few days before the conference when you send that final follow-up meeting. So by doing this, by sending all of these follow-up messages, you're increasing your chances of getting seen, increasing your chances of an investor taking interest in your company, maybe checking out your profile on the platform, which if you don't do a good profile, then you might miss out on the opportunity of meeting with that investor. So all of these aspects that we're talking about today are important. Your profile, your initial message, being diligent about following up, reaching out to as many investors as possible. All of that is what is going to make a difference for you in getting as many meetings as possible and getting, more bang for your buck, because going to conferences is expensive. We know that. And you really, if you follow these steps, you'll see a good result. So here are just some examples. I'm not going to read through, but you'll be able to read through these sample messages when we send you these slides. And then there'll be a follow-up message, a third message, and a fourth message, and where, at the top, you will say fourth and final request, for example. So the moral of the story is, the more effort you put into this, the better result you will get. It's directly proportional. It's a lot of effort, but if you put the effort in, if you follow these steps, you will see the results. So Karen, would you like to talk about actually preparing for that investor meeting once
Absolutely.
once they have these meetings scheduled?
Absolutely. Yeah, so, it's crazy how much work is required to even just get an initial meeting, although, don't use this platform as just a way to focus on just first time meetings. We also recommend, when you're looking at the investor profiles, if you see someone who could potentially be a fit for you in the future, maybe it's good for you to reach out to them too, to start forming a relationship now, and even frame it as that, saying, we know we're too early for you, but we know you have a lot of experience in this space, and we wanted to get some of your advice, some of your feedback on our company. Investors love giving advice. So if you frame it that way, you can probably get additional meetings and start forming these relationships. Not only will you get great advice, likely, but you'll also start a relationship that, they may say, yeah, you are really too early, but you know what, reach out to us when you have such and such a milestone, and we'll have an additional conversation. And then you're getting a leg up. You're already on their radar as a potential fit at a later stage. So definitely see these conferences as an opportunity, not just for your current fundraise, but for all of your future fundraises as well, and a way to kind of get yourself off the ground and getting your first steps in for your next rounds. And, just think forward that way. But some of this you should have already done before you even do the investor meeting, because you should be reaching out or you should be doing your research on the investor before you're even reaching out to book the meeting. But you want to make sure that it's fresh in your mind. So you want to look at this definitely well before you're reaching out, but refresh your memory before you go into the meeting itself. So, what did they include in their partnering profile? Because most conferences are not like RESI. We fill out the investor profiles for them, but most conferences do not. So make sure to look at what they put in their partnering profile. Make sure to look at the firm's website. What is the firm's mission? What portfolio companies have they invested in? And you absolutely want to make sure to read about the people. So some firms will have a bio about each of the people within the firm. But also make sure to look on LinkedIn. And this is especially true about the person with whom you're meeting. You definitely want to make sure to know who they are ahead of time. Do they have a scientific background? Do they have a finance background? What is their role in the firm? All of these things you want to know ahead of time, because it can affect what you say, how you say it, those sorts of things. We cannot emphasize enough the importance of knowing your audience. Because that's definitely something. And when you can put something in a personal spin, showing them that you've done your research, that can make a huge difference in the first impression that you make. So for the meeting itself, how should you run it? Most conferences will have half-hour time slots for the meetings. That's not a lot of time, but it should be enough for an initial meeting. If you can, we would recommend having two people from your firm there, because one person, if they can take notes, there are always going to be specific things that come up, specific things that catch the investor's interest, or they will ask you to send them a specific piece of information after the meeting. You want to make sure to write all that down, as well as your impressions of how the meeting went. Just because, if you are going to a conference and you have back-to-back meetings after the first couple, everything starts blending together and you're not going to be able to remember the details of all of the meetings by the time you're done. And so if you have a second attendee who can sit there and jot down notes, that's great. So that you can keep engaged with the investor and keep maintaining eye contact. If not, if you can, take a minute between meetings to jot things down to make sure that you don't forget, that's fine. But either way, just make sure to record your impressions after every meeting, because you won't remember at the end. We always recommend preparing for about 15 minutes worth of presentation, but be prepared for a conversation without slides. And really make it a conversation. But make sure to leave time for questions and additional discussion. But we had a client who was coming to a conference, and he was going through his initial meetings, and he did about half a day's worth of meetings, and he was talking about how he was trying to, going through a slide deck with the investors, and he was getting zilch. No real engagement, not a lot of follow-up. And our CEO, Dennis, told him, you know what? Ditch the PowerPoint, have a conversation with them, engage them. Don't make it about, running through your spiel on the pitch deck, because that gives them a chance to disengage. It doesn't really keep you the investor can just zone out and not pay attention. And he noticed a world of difference in the second set of the meetings that he had. He said that investors were much more engaged, they were much more positive in their responses, and there were better outcomes for his meetings for future conferences. So that's just, something that we recommend. Maintain eye contact, have a conversation with them, keep them engaged, and you'll notice a huge difference. By all means, keep those slides there in case you want to show them a specific piece of data or a demonstration of how your product works or anything like that you might want on hand. But don't use it as a crutch to get you through the meeting. And also make sure to ask the investor questions, because that is absolutely crucial. So, next slide.
I was just going to add something, Karen,
Oh, yeah.
that, yeah, so, to engage the investor in conversation, the part about asking questions is a really good way to engage them, because investors love to tell you about what they do and how, how they might be able to help their companies and things like that. So, yeah, it's super important to ask questions. Don't just be there trying to pitch your technology and not listen to the investor, because you can really learn a lot by asking them questions. Back to you.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason that we also talk about asking questions is that, you want to think of that initial meeting like a first date. You are going to be, and think about an investment like a marriage that's going to last for several years. So you want to make sure that the investor is a good fit for you as much as you are a good fit for them. Because you don't want an acrimonious divorce. And there's nothing worse than friction between investors and the management team. If you derail a company, it can cause a lot of problems. And so you really want to make sure that they are a good fit for you. For example, if an investor says that they are extremely hands-on, are you okay with that? Or do you prefer an investor who will take a step back? Or do you not want an investor that is extremely hands-off because you would appreciate the advice and expertise? And so in that case, you might want to make sure you have at least one hands-on investor. How will the investor be able to add value? Is it just the capital, or would they be able to give you advice because they have a lot of experience in this area? Do they have a wide network that can help you with partnerships or opening other doors? Whatever it may be, what do you need to move forward most successfully? Know how the investor type will affect the investments. For example, VCs, they have a very tight fund schedule and a general timeline by which they would like an exit. Is that compatible with your company's plan? Is it not? Do you need investors that are more flexible on their exit timeframe? If it's a corporate VC, for example, how tight is the connection between the corporate VC and the parent corporation? What does that mean in terms of deal terms? We've seen future rounds getting completely derailed because of unfavorable terms in an earlier round, and other investors are seeing what the earlier round terms are, and they're saying, well, we're interested in your company, but we don't like the terms that you had to sign with the previous investor, so we're pulling out. Or we don't like that they have the right of first refusal, and so we're not going to invest. Whatever it may be, it's not just about now, it's also about the future. So whatever those terms are, don't just think of, oh, they're okay for me now. Think of, oh, will they be okay for me in the future and for any other potential investors that might be interested in the future. So you always need to think ahead to your next round, because unless you're exiting, no round is going to be, generally speaking, if you're going to these conferences, especially if you're early stage, it's not going to be your last round. So you have to think ahead. What are my future investors going to think about this, and with the terms? For an investor, do they require a board seat? Most lead investors, I would say probably 95% of lead investors will require either a board or a board observer seat. Sometimes, even if they don't lead, there are certain investors that will require a board seat as well. So this is something that you need to think about. Is this something that I want to give them? Is this someone that I want on my board? How will that affect the way the company runs? So all of this is, you don't want to look before you leap, because you know what, you may end up jumping from the frying pan into the fire, and you don't want that. Do you have any other comments that you want to add, Greg?
I would just say, going back, oh, can't go back. Um, I would just say that the way investors can help you is really important to understand, because there are many investors who can be key partners for you in making connections and sharing their network of other investors, et cetera. And don't miss out on the opportunity to ask how the investor can help you. And what Karen was saying about the importance of some of the terms that different types of investors might require and how that can affect your future fundraising. There's no substitute to good legal advice on negotiating the terms of any investment. So it's good to understand the terms when you meet for the first time. You can ask about that. But when you actually get a term sheet, really important to have good legal advice at your side, that will point out, because if you're doing this for the first time, and I've done it for the first time, there are terms that you might not understand the implications, but a good lawyer will be able to help you with that.
Yeah. And one other thing about a lot of these conferences, they're great for meeting investors, but they're also really good for meeting good quality service providers. If you have a hole and you don't have the expertise, schedule a meeting with one, get some feedback. You might be able to schedule a 1 hour consultation without signing a long-term contract that could help you avoid costly mistakes, because these people are experts in their industry. And whether it's regulatory, reimbursement, legal, anything like that that can have a very large effect on your future and how much it will cost you to reach the market, take the time, put in a little bit of resources to make sure that you are on the right track early on.
Yeah. And if you think that the RESI conference is focused on early stage companies, the service providers that come to RESI, a lot of them have really good programs for early stage companies that make it easy for you to engage them. So it is a great opportunity to meet with service providers at our conference because they're all interested in meeting with early stage companies and letting you know how they can help you on your journey.
Yeah, and not only that, if you get an investor and they're asking you a question about those areas, you can then say, well, I'm not an expert, but I did talk to such and such an expert from this firm, and this is what they recommended for me. You have an answer in place that shows them that you've done your research, you've done your work, you know where your holes. Like to see that kind of initiative and forward thinking. So it all helps you in the long run, not just with showing investors that you know what you're doing, you know who to turn to when you don't know the answers, but also that you're taking initiative to do what needs to be do to get to do what needs to be done to get your company to market as efficiently as possible. Um, that's what this is all about. And one thing that one caveat in all of this that I want to make sure to point out is, don't expect to go to a conference and walk out with a check. That's never going to happen. It's a process. It usually takes between 9 and 18 months to do a fundraising campaign. So we are here, and all of these conferences are here to help you to give you a chance to move your progress down the road. Schedule another meeting, do a follow-up meeting, get someone else on the table. And look at the metrics that you're going to be looking at are, did anyone go off the table so I don't need to worry about trying to contact them again and waste time doing that, because a no is better than no answer. Did I get a yes and a follow-on meeting to keep the conversation going? Did I get a no, but contact me in the future? Did I get a, well, here's a referral to someone who will be a really good fit for you, and then an additional meeting that you can then set up because of that? So there are a lot of different metrics that you can look at and gauge how successful the partnering conference was for you, and also look at it as an opportunity to get feedback. What about your messaging resonates? What doesn't? If it doesn't resonate, how can you change it to make it a better message? What questions are investors constantly asking you? Maybe you can change your materials so that you are addressing those questions up front, because obviously it's very important. So all of these different nuances that you can get from these conferences that can help you in your fundraising campaign. It's always a learning experience, and it's always a way to move yourself forward, but it's not going to bring you to the finish line right off the bat.
Yep.
Do we have any questions?
Yeah, any questions, please type them into the chat or click the raise your hand and you're welcome to ask the question verbally. Well, Karen, I guess we did a pretty good job explaining it because it doesn't look like there are any questions.
Okay, well, I mean, if you don't have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us if something comes up later and you're like, oh man, that's one thing I wanted to ask and I forgot. Just feel free to reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to answer it. If you have any specific questions about the RESI conference or anything like that, oh, you have a question up here. Will more investors be added up until the event? Yes. We are registering new investors every day. They're getting added to the partnering platform every day. We have about 300 in the system now. We anticipate that by the time we get RESI, we'll be in the 350 to 400 range.
The easiest way to contact us is resi@lifesciencenation.com, and we will
Yep.
get back to you.
Yeah, we have here, how do you go about scheduling all these meetings during the conference? That depends on the partnering platform that the company is uh, conference is using. So whenever you get access to the partnering platform that the conference is using, they're usually pretty similar of you put in your profile, you go to the schedule and mark your availability, and then you can go do searches. We do it with being able to filter based on the investor interest, or if you're an investor, you can do it based on the company information. What you do then is you would send the meeting request, and there's usually also a place to put in the message, and you can type in your message and then send it. And then if you go to your message center, you'll be able to see all of the messages you sent and follow up. And so there are slight variations based on the partnering platform in use, but we will be doing, if you are a RESI attendee, we will be doing another partnering tutorial to go through our specific partnering system for this conference, because if you're a previous RESI attendee, we're using a new system this time. So anything that you may remember will be slightly different. So definitely I think we have a recording of our previous tutorial, and you can go to the next one. So that will happen. So that you can take part in. Oh, yeah, Carol, you're saying you only see 192. It's 192 firms, 300 individuals. You're not doing something wrong. So that's probably what's lending to the confusion, because several of our investment firms have more than one attendee joining the conference.
There's a question about if we verify the investors, Karen. You know the process for this.
Yes, investors cannot register unless they go through us. And we definitely vet our investors. Of course, sometimes people who aren't actual investors, they'll be very convincing and they can slip through the cracks. But if anyone tells us of that, we'll make sure to remove them. But we make sure to talk to them. And that's why we can put profiles in for the investors, because we talk to them before they can register. And we get information about what sectors they're interested in, what stage of development, if there are any indications or modalities of preference, how much they're looking to invest, and where they'll invest. So there's a lot of basic information in there that we can then use to populate their investor profiles, so that you can know ahead of time if they're a fit or not. We do also have a question if we can share more about our Salesforce investor database.
So for that, I would request that you please. In fact, I can contact you. It would be best to do that offline. If you send an email to resi@lifesciencenation.com, we'll contact you and give you all the information, and do a demo, and run a search for your company.
Yeah, we also have a question here of, can we see investor lists without having registered for the RESI conference? Absolutely. If you reach out to us at resi@lifesciencenation.com, we can absolutely send you a list of the currently registered investors so that you can see who we have attending. On our website, we also have a link on resiconference.com. There's a link where you can see some of the logos of the investors that are registered. There's a question here, when we request a meeting and there are more than one delegate listed, do we ask all of them? The system actually sends it to the organization, and then everyone within the firm can see it and respond.
So you
So
don't
you,
have to send separate invitations to each person. That's
yes.
that's one of the things that is an improvement over our previous partnering platform where you did have to send a request to each participant. With this one, you send one per firm.
Okay, any other questions?
Mhm. Good.
Okay, thank you for the great questions, everyone. All meeting requests needs to go through RESI. If you are a RESI attendee and you're talking about these specific, yes, they have to go through RESI. If you want to subscribe to our investor database, then you can reach out to them at any point in time. So
Chat.
they're two different platforms.
So it's Resi. I'm putting it in the chat at lifesciencenation.com. That's the best email to get in touch with us. All right. Well, have a great day, everyone. And we look forward to seeing you at Resi or at a future event.
Or if you reach out to us if you need any more information about the investor database as well, we'd be happy to set up a one-on-one call so that we can do a personalized demo. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good one.